They told you the story was about sin. They told you it was about punishment. But what if everything you thought you knew about Sodom and Gomorrah was a lie? Buried beneath layers of doctrine and fear, hidden between the lines of ancient texts, lies a truth so powerful that it was deliberately erased from history. A truth that challenges everything we've been conditioned to believe about divine justice, morality, and the very nature of God. Have you ever wondered why a seemingly all-powerful, all-loving God would unleash fire and brimstone on an entire city, erasing it and everyone in it from existence? Why would a God who supposedly values justice and love annihilate children, animals, and even vegetation in Sodom and Gomorrah? What was the real reason for such a violent act? And here's the real question: have we been lied to about the true purpose behind it? Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial, shocking, and misunderstood stories in the Bible. Not just the sanitized version you've heard in Sunday school, but the hidden truth, the real reason behind God's destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. A truth so controversial that it has been buried by mainstream religion. A truth that flips the narrative on its head, and it's not what you think. Imagine, for a moment, that the destruction of these cities had nothing to do with the reasons we've been taught. What if it wasn't about wrath, but about something far more unsettling? Something that forces us to confront the very core of our existence. The truth, the real truth, is not about fire and brimstone. It is about a force so disruptive, so transformative, that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of human evolution. You see, the ancient world held secrets, sacred knowledge about the power of consciousness, energy, and the divine potential within us. But there were those who sought to suppress it, to keep humanity in darkness, bound by fear and ignorance. Sodom and Gomorrah were not merely cities of sin. They were centers of something much greater. Something that, if left unchecked, could have awakened a shift in humanity too soon. And so, the true story was buried, replaced with a narrative of judgment and destruction. But why? What was so dangerous about what these people knew? Why was it necessary to erase their legacy so completely that only ashes remained? The answer is unsettling, and yet, it is the key to understanding why history repeats itself, why spiritual awakening has always been met with resistance, and why even today, forces are working to keep you from uncovering your true power. What if I told you that the same battle is happening now? That the forces that silenced the knowledge of Sodom and Gomorrah are still at work, ensuring that you never discover who you truly are? Stay with me, because once you hear this truth, you will never see the world the same way again. We've all heard the story. Sodom and Gomorrah, the infamous cities destroyed by divine wrath. Fire and brimstone rained down, reducing them to ashes. Why? Because they were wicked? Because they were immoral? That's what we were told. But what if that's not the whole truth? What if the real reason they were annihilated was something else entirely? Something so powerful, so unsettling, that it was buried, erased, and banned from the scriptures. Think about it. Why would a just and loving God obliterate not just the guilty, but the innocent? Children, animals, even the very land itself. Does that sound like justice, or does it sound like something else? And what about Lot, the so-called righteous man who was spared? A man who offered his own daughters to a violent mob. A man whose story takes an even darker turn after the city's destruction. Is this really the hero of the tale, or is there something we've overlooked? Now, here's where things take a turn, where history and theology collide with something far more profound. According to a banned Gnostic text, the paraphrase of Shem, Sodom was not a den of depravity. It was a beacon of enlightenment, a sanctuary where people were waking up. They were uncovering ancient truths, guided by beings of light, realizing their connection to the divine, and breaking free from the illusions that kept them enslaved to the material world. They weren't sinners, they were seekers, and that made them a threat. A threat to whom? Not to humanity, not to morality, but to the very God who destroyed them. In Gnostic belief, the God of the Old Testament is not the ultimate divine being, but a false god, a demiurge, a ruler obsessed with control. He didn't create the world as a gift. He forged it as a prison. His goal? To keep humanity ignorant, shackled to the physical realm, blind to their own divinity. And every time humanity came close to breaking free, he struck them down. The flood of Noah, a reset, the exile from Eden, a punishment for seeking knowledge, and Sodom. Sodom was on the verge of something monumental. The people there were ascending. They were reaching beyond the veil, and the demiurge couldn't allow that. So he did what he always does. He crushed the light before it could spread. Fire and brimstone weren't divine justice. They were a cover-up, a suppression of knowledge, an attempt to erase a civilization that had come too close to the truth. But here's the real question. If this was just an ancient story, why does it still matter today? Because the battle isn't over. The same forces that silenced Sodom still work to keep us asleep. They distract us. They divide us. They keep us consumed with the material world so we never remember who we truly are. But what if you could break free? What if you could reclaim the knowledge that was lost? What if the destruction of Sodom wasn't the end of their story, but the beginning of yours? The fire that rained upon Sodom was more than a punishment. It was a message. But was it divine justice or was it fear disguised as righteousness? When we unravel the threads of this ancient tale, we find a story not of sin, but of suppression. A battle not of morality, but of knowledge. A struggle between the forces that seek to control and those who dare to awaken. From the beginning, the scriptures have challenged us with paradoxes. Adam and Eve, cast from Eden not for their wickedness, but for their pursuit of knowledge. Lot, deemed righteous not for his virtue, but for his unquestioning obedience. Time and time again, we see a pattern. Those who conform are rewarded. Those who question are cast into the fire. And so we must ask, what does this God truly value? To the Gnostics, the destruction of Sodom was not a lesson in divine wrath, but a warning about the dangers of blind submission. They saw in these stories the fingerprints of a force that sought not to elevate humanity, but to keep it in ignorance. They understood that true divinity was not found in fear, but in the courage to seek truth beyond the veil of doctrine. The battle, they believed, was never about flesh and blood, but about light and darkness, knowledge and control. But why does this matter to you? Because this battle did not end in the ashes of Sodom. It rages on, now more than ever. Who controls the narratives that shape our reality? Who dictates what is true and what is forbidden? The same forces that silenced Sodom seek to silence you. The same fear that turned Lot's wife into salt now paralyzes minds, preventing them from looking back, from questioning, from remembering who they truly are. And yet, the power to break free has always been within you. You are not merely a creation, you are a creator. You are not a servant of fear, you are a bearer of light. Just as the people of Sodom stood at the precipice of awakening, so too do you. The question is not whether you are capable, but whether you are willing. Will you cling to the narratives given to you, or will you seek the truth, no matter how disruptive it may be? This story is not just about ancient cities, it is about your own soul. The fire that fell upon Sodom is the same fire that burns within you, the fire of transformation, of liberation, of ascension. The choice is, and has always been, yours. But what of Lot's wife? Was her fate truly a punishment? Or was it something more profound? Salt, in its esoteric meaning, is not just a remnant. It is a purifier, a preserver, a symbol of transformation. Jesus himself said, "You are the salt of the earth." What if her act of looking back was not defiance but transcendence? What if, instead of being destroyed, she was liberated? What if she became something more? The systems of control have always feared those who dare to remember. They demonize those who question. They silence those who seek. And yet, every great awakening begins with a single act of defiance, the willingness to look beyond the fire, beyond the fear, beyond the illusion. And so, we arrive at the crossroads, not of ancient cities turned to ash, nor of distant myths buried in time, but of something far more personal, the battle within. The choice between blind obedience and divine awakening is not a relic of the past. It is the silent war waged in the depths of your own soul. Every moment you accept the narratives imposed upon you without question, you step further into the shadows. Every time you dare to ask, dare to seek, dare to remember who you are, you step into the light. What if everything you've been told about your existence was designed to keep you small? What if the stories that shaped your beliefs were never meant to lead you to divinity, but to keep you from claiming it? The destruction of Sodom was not just about judgment, it was about fear, a fear that still lingers in every system, every institution, every force that benefits from your ignorance. And yet, the flame of truth cannot be extinguished, not then, not now, not ever. You were never meant to bow. You were never meant to live in chains. You are not merely a creation of the divine. You are the divine, clothed in flesh, walking this earth with the power to shape reality itself. The same fire that reduced cities to dust burns within you, not as destruction, but as transformation. It is the fire of knowing, the fire of seeing, the fire of becoming. And no force in this world or beyond can take that from you unless you allow it. So I leave you with this. When the world demands your silence, when fear whispers that it is safer to comply, when the weight of old stories presses against your soul, will you look back? Or will you walk forward, unshaken, untamed, unstoppable? The choice is yours, but remember this. The light does not beg for permission to shine. It simply does. If this message resonated with you, if something inside you stirred, do not let it fade. Be part of this awakening. Share this with those ready to see beyond the veil. Leave your voice in the comments below, and subscribe for deeper revelations ahead. The journey does not end here, it is only beginning.